Joining us now is RNC spokeswoman Elizabeth Pipko. Shalom.
Shalom, good to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. In a few hours, the first presidential debate. Is the whole team busy preparing, or is it him, Mr. Trump, alone in the room?
So he definitely has a team around him that helps him. Then again, he does a lot on his own. I always say that he doesn't get enough credit for a lot of his own victories and decisions over the last 8 years or so, but there is certainly a lot of excitement. We haven't seen a presidential debate, obviously, in a few years now, and I think he is ready to come up against Joe Biden and show the world why he is the obvious choice this November.
And the question is, will he be tough and mean or nice with the, some would say, gentle president?
I think tough is a better way to say it. He's never mean, he's always tough, and I think that's what we need right now.
Okay, so let's delve into a few issues, but first of all, for those who aren't familiar, tell us please about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So I am a daughter of Jewish immigrants from the former Soviet Union. I was raised in New York City. My entire life was kind of spent making sure that my parents and grandparents told me everything I needed to know about how lucky I am, not only to be in America, but also to be able to be an open, proud Jew, something that they could not do back in Russia, obviously. So that kind of consumes my life and every decision that I make. I've worked in politics on and off. I was lucky enough to be on President Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. I did a bit in politics after that, but I also went back to school to get my master's, went back to like my careers and other things that I was doing in the mainstream world. And then I kind of realized that I could not stay away. This country is too important. This election was too important. And I was blessed to get this incredible opportunity. So here I am representing the RNC and President Trump.
Now, what are the main missions for the party now? Of course, winning the elections, but what else?
Yeah, so like you said, winning the election is number one for us. But I think with that comes other responsibilities, like, for example, making sure that we have a strong, proud group of American citizens that we are serving, because that is our job, right? To serve the American people so they feel confident voting for this party and for this ticket in November. It's making sure Americans feel safe and secure with the election that happens, the results that come out in the entire process. And it's also making sure that we have a strong base so that President Trump's incredible next 4 years and everything that he has brought to the party and to this country lives on long past his term, so that his mission of America first, of peace through strength, of everything that he has brought to this country, which is straight through success and through strength, kind of lives on after his term does.
Now, just like around the world, the Jewish community in the US is going through challenging days since October 7th, and you're feeling that as well.
It's been tough for me. I don't think any of us saw, obviously, October 7th coming. The videos, the pictures, everything I saw from that day, I'm sure we all kind of share in the sentiment, was some of the worst things I've ever seen with my own two eyes, something I never thought I would see in this lifetime. It's been incredibly tough knowing what happened to my own people, knowing this was the worst day for the Jewish community, of course, since the Holocaust, and knowing kind of how the world responded to it. I think that was almost even harder than living through the details of that day, because as we mourn our people in Israel, the entire world decided not to mourn with us. They decided to turn a blind eye to everything that went on that day. And while our hostages are still being held, Americans included, while the Israeli people are still suffering, a lot of people around the world have chosen to completely turn away from that. Some have, disgustingly enough, sided with the actual terrorist group that caused the atrocities on that day. So it's been hard for me to look around, especially at people my own age, in my own country, my own city, at my own former universities, and to see the response. But with that only comes more responsibility for people like me to educate the world about the hatred that comes from a lot of different groups, the hatred that exists for the Jewish state, the hatred that exists for the Jewish people, and the reason that we in the United States have a duty to fight this kind of hate.
Now, President Biden spoke out against anti-Semitism, but do you feel that the administration needs to do much more to fight back against anti-Semitism?
I do. Look, I am in this country right now, 28 years old, having a lot of people my age and younger message me on a daily basis, asking me what they should do, asking me if they should return back to their classrooms, asking me if they should avoid school altogether, avoid public places. These are the kind of issues that my parents and grandparents worried about back in the Soviet Union. It's not something I should ever have to think about or people should be asking me about. And that means that our leadership, our institutions, and this administration has failed. They failed the Jewish community, and they have failed countless of us who have wanted a safer America, a stronger America, and instead got the opposite.
So we're talking about anti-Semitism. How do you deal with the fact that among the supporters of the Republican Party, some of them come from the radical and sometimes anti-Semitic right?
So look, I don't get into, the fringe communities and what they come up with on a daily basis, which by the way exists obviously on both sides of the aisle. For me, for the RNC, for President Trump, it's about disavowing anything that we see that we disagree with. We do it countless times, even if it doesn't get coverage in the mainstream media, but I am proud to represent Donald Trump and this party, proud of those who have stood up against this kind of hatred, any kind of hatred that exists in this country. And if I thought that any of that existed in the core of this party or in President Trump or his family, I wouldn't be supporting him. So I know for a fact where he stands. I know where we all stand. I know where the majority of Americans stand, and that's against any kind of fringe hatred, any kind of, disgusting antics that people like to bring up left and right, but that simply do not exist when you look at the core of this party and when you look at this candidate.
Now, that's regarding radical right. When it comes to the radical left, do you agree with the claims that the radical left is influencing or even taking over the Democratic Party?
Oh, 100%. I think people don't like to point it out as much. Obviously, we see that in the mainstream media, but when it comes to the right, when it comes to any kind of anti-Semitism or hatred or anything that truly does not exist in this country, we call it out every single time. However, on the left, I've seen actually the opposite of that. I've seen it embraced by countless institutions. I've seen it embraced by members of Congress, and I've seen it slowly creep up, like you said, and start to take over the party, and that's a huge problem.
Now, Israel Defense Minister had to fly to Washington because of the new challenge, the ammunition dispute, the American pressure. That's the last thing we thought we'd need to deal with during this war against terror.
It is. Look, we have had a precedent set in this country for decades now. Every single administration since Israel's creation has supported the Jewish state. We have stood in solidarity with the Jewish state. We have an incredible allyship that many other countries could only dream about. There's a reason for that. It's because the security of the United States in many ways actually depends on our relationship with Israel. It's not a one-sided relationship like many people incorrectly understand it to be. I think for a lot of people, they were disappointed to see this administration kind of change their ways. And by that, I mean that we know Joe Biden is a politician for several decades now. We know how he has stood firmly in support of Israel. And we saw how that shifted after October 7th. Maybe not because his own views shifted, but simply because the views of his own party and his base shifted, and he needs those views and those votes in November. And that's a huge problem.
Okay, now regarding your candidate, former President Trump, how do you relate to those who say he's not predictable? He may want payback for what he gave Israel during his first term. He may demand concessions.
Look, I don't know what payback means. I don't know him to be that kind of a man or that kind of a leader. What I will say is no one can predict the future, but everyone can look at the past, right? And it's not here for us to speculate. We don't need to do that. We can just look a few years back. We can directly compare 4 years of Trump's administration and close to 4 years now of Biden's. I think the choice is a blatantly obvious one. Donald Trump stood in solidarity with Israel for 4 years. He stood with our values, which is obviously America first, strength first. Anytime a terrorist attack happens, we stand with those that were affected. I cannot say that for this administration. God forbid 5 hostages would be held for over 200 days, 5 American hostages, and Donald Trump would not do anything. I do not see that ever happening. I've been incredibly disappointed with the views, with the actions of this administration. I know for a fact Donald Trump would have been different. And I think anyone that wants to be honest with themselves and look at what happened under 4 years of Donald Trump and nearly 4 under Joe Biden knows that to be the case.
So you feel that his positive attitude towards Israel is his true and authentic agenda?
Yeah, look, I have seen his attitude towards Israel and the Jewish community, like I just said, for 4 years when he was president, but countless people actually saw his views before that. He was the grand marshal, for example, at the Israeli Day Parade in New York, a parade that I've walked in almost every year since I was a 3-year-old little girl. I've seen his support from the Jewish community. I know of his support for the Jewish community from countless individuals that have interacted with him. Again, I'm proud to represent him and to stand with him. I'm so proud of what he did for the state of Israel in the 4 years that he was in office. I know for a fact he will continue that strong and supportive relationship when he gets back into office. And I would hope that everyone can read past some of these headlines to his actions and they would feel the exact same way.
Now, we began with you telling us about your Jewish family. Do you feel that your Jewish faith influenced your personal and professional life?
Oh, 100%. It's funny because people don't realize that I can actually be religious at the same time as doing what I'm doing. Maybe just that they don't see that a lot, but there's not a decision that's made in my life without, for example, saying the Shema first. There's not really anything that goes on in my life, any event that happens, any achievement that happens that I don't know for a fact comes from Hashem. And it's something that I think about every single morning, every night before I go to sleep. And it's something that I hope to continue on further and further. and to show people my Jewish pride. I think I was incredibly proud, obviously, before October 7th, but now somehow even more so. I want to scream it from the rooftops and encourage everyone to get closer to Hashem, learn more, study more, be more, and to be as proudly Jewish as they possibly can.
Okay, Elizabeth Pipko, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.